On today's show, I'm looking at 5 starting pitchers the Rangers could sign this free agency if they are serious about spending big, getting another ace to pair alongside Jacob deGrom. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Before we get into the 5 big-name free agent pitchers the Rangers could sign if they're serious about cutting some big checks this winter, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, before we get started, just had some news and notes. Just a celebration of 1 year ago today. The Rangers won ALCS Game 1 with that legendary catch from Evan Carter, a legendary performance from Jordan Montgomery. Just a happy anniversary to that lovely, lovely day in Rangers history. And some news that the Rangers have 2 players who have been nominated as Gold Glove finalists. Not really surprising that it is Marcus Semien at second base and Nathaniel Lowe at first base. Both of those guys had fantastic defensive seasons. Hope that both of them end up winning what would be, at least for Lowe, I know, the second Gold Glove of his career. And for Marcus, I believe that would be the second Gold Glove, maybe the third, at least at second base. I think the second for him at second base. But let's get into the meat of this episode. 5 aces, 5 very big top name free agent pitchers. If the Rangers are going to spend big on somebody this winter, I'm feeling much more confident that it's going to be a starting pitcher. Now, there is the chance that maybe they shock the world and sign Juan Soto because this team has been a big player in free agency, has landed some big old fish with Chris Young in the front office, with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. Not a whole lot expected that. Not a whole lot expected the Rangers to sign Jacob deGrom, who is, the best starting pitcher on the planet. Again, when healthy, they paid a lot more than everyone else was willing to because of the injury scares with deGrom. They got their ace, and hopefully next year he will be being that ace at the top of the rotation. But outside of that, right now the Rangers' number 2 is slotted to be, depends on who you ask. Maybe it's Cody Bradford, maybe it's Tyler Mahle, maybe you think it's John Gray, maybe you think it's Kumar Rocker, or maybe you're really optimistic and you think it's Jack Leiter. Any way you slice it, at this point, it seems like the Rangers could use another co-ace, especially with the health concerns with deGrom. I'm personally of the camp that I think he's going to be a lot more healthy next year, that we finally have been this will they, won't they, with, avoiding a second Tommy John surgery for him. He got the surgery. Usually it takes about a year after recovering to fully come back from that. This was his recovery year. And so hoping that next year he can be an ace on top of that staff. But when you get into October, you can't just have one ace. You need multiple. You need multiple guys. In my definition of an ace, is a guy who you feel good about throwing game 1 of a playoff series. And there's quite a few elite starting pitchers on this free agent market. Let's start with the number 1, the guy who I think is going to get the most money this offseason, the guy who I think is the best pitcher on the market. That's right, it's Corbin Burnes. Coming off of 1 season in Baltimore, the rest of his career was spent in Milwaukee, where he won a Cy Young. He won an ERA title. He's coming off of a season where he will probably finish second in Cy Young voting to Tarek Skubal. Maybe if Cleveland voters get their say, then he's going to finish third to Emmanuel Clase, but I'm pretty darn sure he's going to finish second in that Cy Young race. He has been one of the most consistent, one of the best pitchers in baseball for basically a half decade since he came up and was an everyday, or at least mostly everyday starter in 2020, a 2.11 ERA in that season. The next year, he finished 6th in Cy Young voting that season, won his first Cy Young ever that next season, had a sub-3 ERA again the next year, a little bit shakier of a year in 2023, ERA north of 3 for the first time as a starting pitcher, and then comes back, has a sub-3 ERA with Baltimore, is an all-star for the fourth time in his career. He was fantastic this season. He was incredibly consistent through 8 one-run innings in the ALDS in a game in which he lost. A 1-0 loss where he pitched 8 innings and looked absolutely fantastic. His offense just could not do anything. Unfortunately for him, Cole Reagans was on the other side of the mound. But this guy has been as durable, as good, as consistent as it gets. I love consistency in a starting pitcher. I think it is an incredibly undervalued ability for a starting pitcher. A guy who is going to go out there every single time and get you a quality start. I mean, last year he only had one start where he went below 5 innings. In modern day baseball, that makes him, I don't know, basically the equivalent of Cy Young, who pitched like 500, 600 innings in every season. He had 194 and a third innings this past year, 193 and 2/3 the year before that, 202 innings the year before that. I mean, he's had 32 or more starts in each of the last 3 seasons. The season before that, where he won the Cy Young, 28 starts that year, 9 starts in 12 games in a shortened COVID season in 2020. The guy just posts. He shows up. He's durable. He's a workhorse, which is what you want at the top of your rotation. Now, he's not going to have a whole lot of 8-inning 30 strikeout games. I mean, no one's ever had 30 strikeouts, but you know what I mean. The flashy, oh my gosh, this is the most brilliant pitching performance I've ever seen. Games you would see like Jacob deGrom having, the occasional Blake Snell outing like that. Guys like Garrett Cole or Cole Reagans just come out there and just absolutely blow everyone away. But pretty much every single time out there, he's going to be really, really good, and he's going to give your team a chance to win. Now, how old is he? He's going into his age 30 season. I love the consistency of him. Again, it's impossible to predict pitcher injuries, but if you're banking on durability, this is the best guy that's out there. It's one of the most durable starting pitchers that we have in this game of baseball. I mean, it's him, it's Aaron Noah, it's Garrett Cole, of guys who have been incredibly consistent, incredibly healthy for the last 5 or so seasons. Now, what is he expected to make? Well, according to Spotrac, all these contract estimates are according to Spotrac. He is projected for 6 years, $180 million. That is $30 million a year. That would take him through his age 35 season. And I feel very confident about that. I think it honestly might be higher than that. I mean, a guy with this kind of durability, coming off of an amazing season, coming into a market where there's going to be a lot of aggressive bidders on starting pitching. I mean, the Dodgers have spent $1 bazillion on starting pitching. Next year, they'll get Ohtani back. Next year, they're hoping for more health from all of the many, many guys that they've paid $100 million to be in their rotation and have spent gratuitous amounts of times on the IL. Baltimore is coming in with a new ownership group that is in a very, very low payroll. I think they'll be very, very aggressive in trying to retain the services of the guy who they traded a lot of pretty decent assets for. It only got 1 season out of him. He is with Scott Boras. So he was never going to sign an extension unless Baltimore just absolutely blew him away. He is a guy who of everyone in this free agent market, of the pitchers that have been free agent starting pitchers the last 3-4 years, I feel like this is the safest bet. And in terms of spending big money on free agents and starting pitchers in general, I mean, safe bets make me feel much more comfortable. Starting pitchers and pitchers in general, you never know how healthy they're going to be, how durable they're going to be. But this guy has been the model of health and consistency and durability. That is everything you want in a starting pitcher, especially when he's going to be paired next to Jacob deGrom, who it's unclear if there's going to be an innings limit on him next year, if there's going to be a kind of starts limit. The same thing is going to be said for Kumar Rocker, who I think at this point, if the Rangers don't sign any free agent starting pitchers, which I don't think is going to be the case, I think they're going to sign at least 1, maybe 2. But Rocker's probably going to be on an innings limit as well next year. And to have a guy you can throw out there every 5th day, he's going to give you, 5, 6, 7 quality innings every single time out. Usually not going to have a blow up start. Even when he doesn't have his best up, he is going to step up and get you a chance to win a ball game every 5th day. That is a hugely, hugely valuable thing, something that is rare in this sport, and a reason why I think this guy is going to be the most sought after free agent starting pitcher on this market. Can the Rangers afford him? Yeah, they can. They can afford anybody. I don't know. They can't afford everybody, but they can afford anybody, if that makes sense. They have room in their budget to expand this payroll. There's a lot of money coming off of the books. So even though it might be a long shot for them to land Corbin Burnes, I definitely think they're going to be in there having conversations with them. And if they have their pick of the litter designing one starting pitcher this offseason, I think Corbin Burnes has got to be the top choice. Coming up, we'll look at a couple of lefties who have some really high upsides and a little bit of worries and some flaws, just like all of us do, right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get tickets for all the live events that you're looking to go to, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's comedy, whether it's theater. Game Time is the best place to get your tickets for any of those events. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can check out all their different deals, all their different, features in the app. They've also got zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time pick the seats. You can also get a panoramic view from your seat in the app, so you know exactly what it's going to look like before you buy those tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be looking at 5 starting pitchers that are more in the mid-tier, not quite top end, not quite bargain bin. If the Rangers are looking to save a little bit of money, not be too aggressive players at the top of the market, these are 5 guys I will be talking about tomorrow that they can sign. Now, the number 2 starting pitcher, according to me and my own projections on this market, the guy who I feel the second most comfortable in signing is Blake Snell, the 32-year-old 2-time Cy Young Award winner, one of, I believe, 3 starting pitchers in MLB history to win a Cy Young in the American League and the National League. He's only won one in each. His Cy Young seasons were 2018 with the Rays, where he won 21 games, which kind of shocking that a Rays pitcher did that, especially when he only pitched 180 innings that year, had a 1.89 ERA, pitching in the AL East. That's a very, very difficult thing to do. And then in 2023, had another Cy Young season. After a rough first 4, 5, 6 starts of the season, he was just absolutely unhittable from that point through the end of the year with the Padres at a 2.25 ERA, led baseball in walks, also led baseball in ERA as well. He is a guy who will walk a lot of guys. He will not pitch very deep into games, but fun fact for him this year, coming off of his first year in San Francisco, he has an opt-out. He could make $38 million next year and then become a free agent again after that season. I feel very confident in saying that he is going to opt out and get a longer than 2-year deal. He was another one of those lefty Scott Boras clients like Jordan Montgomery who didn't sign until very, very late in the season. And as a result, his season kind of went a little bit off the rails. Early on in the year, he struggled in March, in May, and June. He had some injuries, which I believe are at least smallly in part due to him not having a normal offseason, not having a normal spring training, signing very late into spring training. But from the month of July on, this guy he was the best pitcher in baseball. He was absolutely unhittable. A 0.75 ERA in 4 starts in July, a 1.64 ERA in 6 starts in August, and a 1.0 ERA in 4 starts in September. This guy is so freaking good. He's so good. You know exactly what you're getting with this guy. He has been consistent. He has been mostly pretty durable. I mean, he made 27 starts back in 2021, 24 back in 2022, 32 starts last year, 32 starts in 2023. 20 starts this year because of injuries kind of hampering him. He did end up making some starts in April, but spent some time on the IL with a recurring injury in his adductor strains. He's had that 3 different times in his career. This was also happening in June. He also had a groin strain. Actually, the groin strain was in June. The adductor issues were early on in this season. He's a guy who at his peak is absolutely unhittable. He's unhittable. He's the best lefty we've seen in a long time. Basically, since Pete Kershaw, this is kind of the rarefied air that Blake Snell is in. Now, unlike Kershaw and unlike Corbin Burnes, he's not going to pitch you very deep into games. He actually just had his first career complete game ever this year. First time ever. And now he said, hey, y'all can finally shut up about it. Which I don't blame him. I'm sure I would be very annoyed with the rest, with reporters asking me about it all the time. But basically, you look at the first half numbers, 8 starts, an ERA north of 6. Second half numbers, 12 starts, an ERA south of 1.5. A 1.45 ERA in the span of 12 starts. Just absolutely insane. Also, 68 in the third innings in those second half starts, 103 strikeouts. This is insane. This guy has the highest career Ks per 9 of anybody in baseball history. Ever. This guy strikes out everybody. His stuff is so incredible. Doesn't have the best handle on it. He's gonna frustrate you at times. He's gonna have some blow up starts, but boy howdy, when he is on, it is absolutely beautiful and electric. He's going to be going into his age 32 season. He is projected to sign you a 5-year deal worth $131 million. That's $26.3 million in average annual value. I feel pretty confident if the Rangers signed him to this deal that he would live up to it. He's going to be going into his age 32 season. So of these guys, he is the oldest of these, at least main 4, I would say. There's one more that kind of fits in this category that I'm not really going to talk about because I don't think he's actually an option for just about anybody. But this guy is as good as it gets at his peak. He is incredible. He is not as consistent as we've seen with Corbin Burnes. He is not going to get you the innings. So you need to have a good bullpen that you trust that can get you some bulk if you have this guy in your rotation. But yeah, in terms of a lefty with pure stuff, or just honestly just pure stuff in all of baseball, there is no better pure stuff than Blake Snell. It is incredible to watch. When he is on, he is just unhittable. The only thing stopping Blake Snell is his pitch count and his walk rate. And if that's the only thing that can stop you, that makes you a pretty darn good pitcher, like Blake Snell has been in his career. Coming up, we're talking about Max Fried, another lefty high on my list of guys who could really be a perfect pair of aces next to Jacob deGrom. But why I'm a little concerned about him and just about any starting pitcher on this market, right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, it's time to start big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. There's all kinds of football odds on there, some World Series odds right now. I believe the Dodgers are still the favorites. Let's make sure of that. Nope, the Yankees at plus 125 right now are the favorites to win the 2024 World Series. Dodgers, the next favorite at plus 180, and the Mets at plus 390. Despite tying that series up, I'm a little shocked. Those miracle Mets are really out there fighting out the Guardians right now at plus 750. Those are the 4 teams left, and you can check out all the odds for football, baseball, basketball, no matter what it is. Go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day on Thursday's show. I'll be going bargain shopping, looking at 5 different starting pitchers the Rangers could sign if they're looking to save a little bit of cash this free agency. Guys who are not going to be nearly as expensive as either the ace pitchers that I'm talking about now, or even the mid-tier guys on tomorrow's show. Next guy on this list, Max Fried, a left-handed pitcher who has spent his entire career with the Atlanta Braves, a guy who has won a Gold Glove, actually 3 Gold Gloves, 2-time All-Star, a World Series winner, also a Silver Slugger as a pitcher. Fun fact, he is the last Silver Slugger at pitcher we will ever see, unless you count Shohei Ohtani, which I don't. There's not going to be an award for a pitcher given in terms of these Silver Sluggers. He will probably win several more DH Silver Sluggers, but 2021, the last time that there was a Silver Slugger given out to a pitcher, it was awarded to him. Pretty solid season for him, pretty solid career for him, a guy who has been very durable. He is one of the most durable lefties out there on the market, coming off of a pretty darn good season with Atlanta. He has spent 8 seasons in the big leagues. He has spent some time on the IL, missing a little bit of time with a let's say Cy Young injury, no, a UCL injury early on in his career. But he has already had his first Tommy John out of the way this year, coming off of one of his 2 All-Star seasons, 2 complete games for him this year, 174 in a third innings, an ERA of 3.25 for his career. He has been incredibly consistent of having, around 3 or sub 3 ERAs. He has a 3.07 career ERA in 8 years in the big leagues, 884 innings. Before this year, last year, he spent a lot of time on the IL in 2022, though he pitched 185 innings, made 30 starts. The year before that, pitched 28 starts, 165 and 2/3 innings, was a perfect 11 starts in that shortened 2020 season, and then made 30 starts again in 2019. So for the most part, this guy has been pretty healthy. He's been very consistent. He doesn't have the most elite raw stuff, but he's not going to beat himself with walks. He is about league average in terms of strikeout rate, in terms of walk rate last year. He is a guy who really excels at not allowing hard contact. He is a guy who throws 7 different pitches at least 4% of the time. He's got a 4-seamer, he's got a sinker, he's got a curveball, he's got a changeup, he's got a sweeper, he's got a slider, he's got a cutter. He uses them all. He mixes his pitches incredibly well. He is the definition of pitchability. I mean, think Yu Darvish when he was here, how he had, it felt like 18,000 different pitches. He could throw them all pretty much when he wanted to, any count, any place in the zone against any type of hitter. And that is kind of Max Fried. He knows how to pitch. He knows how to game plan against starters. He knows how to work deep into games. Now, his postseason success has been mixed. He did win a World Series with the Atlanta Braves back in 2021. But in terms of his playoff starts, it's pretty much been catastrophe or masterpiece. There's not really been a whole lot of in between. So I do have a little bit of concerns with that about him in the postseason, how he holds up. I mean, this year against the Padres in the wild card game, he only went 2 innings and allowed 5 runs. The year before that in the NLCS against Philadelphia, went 4 innings in his 1 start and allowed 3 runs. Under 4 innings in the start before that in 2022 against the Phillies, had a 10.80 ERA in that series, but looked really darn good against the Astros in one of his 2 starts in that 2021 World Series. Had some great starts earlier on that year in the playoffs, had some success in 2020 as well in the playoffs when the Braves went all the way to the NLCS and ended up losing against the Dodgers and Corey Seager. This is a very, very good starting pitcher, a guy who at the beginning of the year I had as my top guy to sign. He's projected to sign a 6-year, $136 million deal, $22.7 million average annual value. Heck, if that was the deal for Max Fried, I would sign it in a heartbeat. I feel more likely he is going to sign something in the $150 million range. I kind of feel like he's going to sign a longer deal and a more lucrative deal than Blake Snell. So far on this, he's making about $4 million less than Snell. But I think that is a very fair contract for Fried. There have been a couple of random nicks and bruises along the way that have made him, not pitching exactly 200 innings or 180 innings the last couple of years, but he's been mostly reliable, mostly durable. Again, the postseason starts. Postseason is such a small sample size theater that maybe it's me making mountains out of molehills. But still, if the Rangers end up signing any of these top three guys, I'd feel really darn good about it. The last two, well, one of them still fits in this category, and that's Shane Bieber, who is going into his age 30 season, coming off of, well, if it played out, if he was healthy the entire season, this would have been the best year of his career. He has won a Cy Young. He had a 1.63 ERA in that COVID-shortened season back in 2020. He also finished fourth in Cy Young voting the year before that in 2019. He finished seventh in Cy Young voting back in 2022. But last year was coming off the worst year of his career. There was some talk about the Guardians potentially shopping him as a trade option. He had a 3.80 ERA, only pitched in 21 games, 128 innings. Not really what you're wanting to see from your ace, and his expected stats, all of the baseball savant numbers were just incredibly in the blue, in the bad range. I mean, his expected batting average, everyone was hitting him hard. They were seeing him well. He was still not beating himself by not walking guys. That's something that he is going to continue doing. But he was just incredibly bad last year. This year comes out, throws 2 starts, both of them 6 shutout innings, total of 10, averaging 10 strikeouts in each of those first 2 starts, didn't allow a single earned run. And then early on, he had Tommy John surgery performed, of course, by Dr. Keith Meister, the Rangers team doctor who performs so many of those surgeries. That was back on April 12th. So he'd probably return sometime around, I don't know, May or June, maybe July is more of an apt date for that return for Shane Bieber. But he's projected to sign a 6-year, $147 million deal, $24.5 million average annual value. Before that, he'd been consistent. He had been a guy who's not going to walk guys, doesn't have elite fastball velocity that he's really relying on. Even this year, I mean, he's only averaging 92 miles an hour with his fastball. He was having an elite strikeout rate, elite walk rate, elite barrel rate. Again, only 2 starts, but he looked as good as he's ever looked in those 2 starts. And you have to wonder where the Guardians would be if he was healthy all season. I mean, maybe they would have ended up with the number 1 spot in home field advantage in these playoffs. Maybe it wouldn't have taken 5 games to dispatch the Tigers. He's a guy who I think is a really interesting case. I don't necessarily see him signing that kind of a deal of 6 years before the injuries, before the one injury. I could have seen him maybe signing that kind of a deal if he had the season that he was projecting to have all played out. But there are definitely some concerns there. He's definitely an interesting case. If he becomes a buy low candidate of signing a 2-year kind of prove it deal of, hey, I can be healthy, I can go back to being who I was, I'm still that guy, I would love the Rangers to get in on it. But I'm definitely a little bit cautious. Now, the number 5 ace the Rangers could sign, of course, I'm talking about Clayton Kershaw. No, I'm done doing that song and dance. Even though Kershaw said he wants to return next year, he's had shoulder injuries, had a lot of injuries this year that he's been dealing with. He wants to see how it plays out. I'm not doing it this year. I'm not entertaining Clayton Kershaw. Maybe finally comes home and signs with the Rangers deal. If it happens, cool. If not, I just don't think it's happening. But then the last guy who I think is kind of in this range, I mean, the real answer is probably Garrett Cole, but the last guy that I'm putting in here, because I don't see the Rangers or anybody that's not the Yankees signing Garrett Cole, if he even opts out at all after this season, is Luis Severino, who is 31 years old, another former Yankee ace, coming off of a pretty decent rebuilding season with the Mets, signed a 1-year deal worth $14 million with them. He is a guy who was one of the best pitchers in baseball from 2017 to 2018, finished third in Cy Young voting in 2017, back as a 23-year-old, finished 9th in 2018 as a 24-year-old. Those were his only 2 all-star seasons. Last year in 2023, coming off of his worst season. He was one of the worst pitchers in baseball, and he admitted as much. Before that, though, 2022, a 3.18 ERA in around 100 innings, was still coming back from injuries, derailed basically from 2019 to 2021. It was just injury city with him. This year, a sub-4 ERA. He's looked pretty darn good in the postseason. 182 innings for him in 31 starts. He's been solid. He's got that upside. Still has some elite stuff. We've seen him have some great starts, especially that start against the Phillies in the playoffs. He's projected for a 4 years, $56 million deal. So not quite in the same range as these other guys. I think I'd be fine giving him something around the 4-year deal. I don't see the Rangers being super aggressive on him, but I just wanted to make it a nice round number of 5. Will the Rangers sign any of these guys? I think they can. I would really like them to sign one of those top 3 guys. A Bieber, if it becomes more of a buy low deal, I think that makes more sense. But any of those top 3 of Burnes, of Snell, of Fried, if Ray Davis ends up opening up the pocketbook, like I'm hoping he will. I hope he doesn't come off of this season and say, yeah, no, we already won our trophy. So like that's it. I don't need to go spend big again. We can just, play it cheap until I can, keep using that TV deal and all of the uncertainty surrounding it as an excuse to not spend money. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Ray Davis, despite my consternations with him and him not spending as much money as I would like him to, I think that this season is going to piss him off. I think it pissed off everybody in the Rangers organization. And I think that Chris Young, the salesman, is perfectly capable, if they can get a competitive offer, he is perfectly capable of convincing just about any free agent to come sign here. I mean, what he did with bringing in Simeon and Seager at the time that he did, with the prospects, like with the long-term projections, from a fan perspective, from an external perspective, looked just absolutely bleak and grim. And he goes in and signs 2 of the best free agents on the market. Then coming off of another season where they just spent all that money to go get Simeon and Seager, he convinces so many starting pitchers in deGrom, in Eovaldi, in Heaney as well to come sign. I think that coming off of this season, he can go to these players and convince one of these aces, I think, to sign if the Rangers are given the budget to do so. Now, there have been some concerns about, spending money is not sustainable. Spending so much money on, starting pitching isn't sustainable. And that's true. Building the entire rotation out of free agent starting pitchers like Texas has done the last couple of years, it's not sustainable. It's not. But they have some homegrown guys that are going to eat up some innings, that are going to be good starters for them this year. They're going to play a big part in this rotation, like Leiter, like Rocker, like Bradford, that are at the very bottom of the payroll scale, making probably league minimum or just around it. So spending on 5 starting pitchers in your rotation, not sustainable. Spending on 2 ace caliber guys, I guess technically it will be 4 total free agents, 2 guys that are ace caliber, 2 that are middle of rotation, 1 in deGrom, 1 in whoever this is, and then you get Malley at $16 million and John Gray at around $16 million. I think that's doable. That allows you some room to go spend on a couple of guys for the bullpen, but you add just 1 guy of this caliber to this rotation, especially one if you can count on them to be durable. And alongside Jacob deGrom, this feels like a much, much more clear path back to the playoffs and back to hopefully another World Series championship. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.